In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the tropics as we've been doing for so many months now, of course, as we're reaching the later portion of September. We've been in the heart of hurricane season for quite a while now, so we're going to dive into that. We're, of course, going to dive into the upcoming pattern where there is some storms on the way. Some big-time temperature flips as we've seen a cooler pattern now for about a week. We are expecting to see that come to an end and eventually see a warmer pattern, but we do have some long-range guidance suggesting that there could be some cooler air on the way later on down the road, so we're going to be diving into that as well. Before we get into things, be sure to check out our business Prestige Weather in the description and the pinned comment down below, where we do early access to our monthly and seasonal forecasts. That does include our third winter forecast that is coming out in just a couple of days. That will be released there for a few weeks before we ever even release it to the general public. So if you want early access to that, be sure to join today in the description and pinned comment down below for only $5 a month. Incredible value there. Now, as we just take a look here at Tropical Storm Felipe, we can see this one is expected to remain at tropical storm status before crossing into kind of post-tropical cyclone status as about a depression strength as it potentially hits Puerto Rico. That would, in my opinion, pretty much end this storm. If it does take this more northern route and stay to the north of these mountainous islands, we could see this one remain at a higher strength and potentially re-strengthen around the Bahamas. So that would be a pretty scary solution to take a look at. Hitting Puerto Rico as a tropical depression would be like typical thunderstorms for them. Now, that might be a little bit of an understatement, but obviously these are some areas that are used to some pretty potent thunderstorms, and a lot of them, to be quite frank. So we would be taking a look at pretty minimal impacts, thankfully, if this solution was the case, and we can all pretty much hope for this to happen, because this is going to really hinder the chance of redevelopment and bring some rainfall, some slight winds, but nothing too crazy if that is the case. As we take a look at the entire Atlantic, we do see that Felipe right there, and then we do see our other tropical cyclone that is potentially going to develop here. We do have a 90% chance of development within the next 48 hours and within the next 7 days, so certainly thinking that this one is going to develop at this point very, very soon, and then we're going to start to talk about where this one could go, how strong it could get. We're going to be able to dive into that stuff within the coming days, likely. So stay tuned. Stay tuned is all I have to say about that. As we take a look at the upcoming pattern, I want to just take us towards this afternoon, and we do have a couple of areas of concern. One here for the Northwest, where we do have some rainfall and snowfall taking place. The upper Midwest down through the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes, we're seeing some storms, and then along that Gulf Coast and Southeast Coast, we're also seeing some storms developing. That's again for today on Wednesday, the 27th. Thursday, here on the 28th, we're going to see pretty similar conditions, a little bit less going on in the Northwest, a little bit less going on in the upper Midwest and Ohio Valley, and pretty similar conditions along the Gulf Coast and Southeast Coast, and especially offshore, actually. We're taking a look at a lot of thunderstorm activity. Let's just keep going, and by Friday, what we end up seeing is a little bit of a very, very minor nor'easter type storm that will bring some pretty heavy rainfall here from New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania up through New York into southern New England there, but this is hardly a developed system. It's just along that area of precipitation, and it will probably feel like a weaker nor'easter. Now, we also have some thunderstorm activity still for Georgia and Florida, which is typical this time of year. We have northwest activity still for Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. And then we have some storminess here across the Dakotas and into Minnesota. But again, these are all very small areas and pretty minor impacts taking place. For Saturday, September 30th, our final day of September, we do see that the most major storm is probably this one along the west. We do see snowfall for the Sierra Nevadas up through portions of the northern Rockies as well, and then some heavier rainfall in between. We can see a little bit of a low developing here over Utah and Nevada. Jet stream is doing about like this, so something like that with that S-curve. Let's just take this towards Sunday, October 1st. I can't believe we're this close to October. 1,003 millibar low pressure center here. We do see some rainfall and snowfall taking place for a lot of the west as a result of this system, but the east, I mean, look at this, just high and dry, very quiet for the most part there to start October. For October 2nd, it's a lot of the same, except we have more minor impacts out west and really dying down out there. So very, very quiet and not a whole lot to discuss. For Tuesday the 3rd here, what we end up seeing is little bits of light showers here across the upper Midwest, Northwest, and down through the Four Corner states. But again, just very, very minor, not a whole lot to go over. By Wednesday the 4th here, what we see is there is a 997 here over eastern Canada, and this is bringing some heavier activity to the Great Lakes of the United States, and certainly here in eastern Canada, we're seeing some major impacts from that one. We have a 992 here in Western Canada, and this is bringing some activity to the Northwest as well. But again, mostly Canada seeing the most major impacts from this. And then we have a pocket of some rainfall, heavy rainfall in here for the Southwest, especially the Four Corner states. And I would expect that very high elevation areas would certainly be seeing snowfall from a solution like this as that storm takes place. For Thursday the 5th here, what we end up seeing is a 997, which is probably our strongest storm of the model run for the United States. This is bringing impacts throughout states like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota, and even up into Wisconsin. Heavier rainfall for a few areas, snowfall for a few mountaintops. Definitely not a major storm, but not a minor one either. And we do see this one, as it moves up into Canada, becomes a 991, so it does strengthen, and it's still bringing some impacts to the upper Midwest here, but it is mostly impacting Canada, which I think is the theme of this model run overall. And as this develops, what we see is there is a little bit of a low precipitation cold front here, and this is allowing for more cold air to pour into the western states. As a result of that, so some of our coldest air of the year probably coming in so far, and I'm excluding last winter, obviously, when I say that, so of the season, I guess you should say. And we do see a little bit of a nor'easter wanting to develop off the southeast. That could be a common occurrence throughout the fall time here, as we've seen one on this model run, and now potentially the beginning of a second one there. Let's take a look at the total precipitation, and this really tells the full story. We do see some above average activity in the Northwest. Same story for the upper Midwest, also down here for the Four Corner states. But really along the east, it's mostly offshore outside of New England and then the very far southeast. But offshore, I mean, look at this. Far above average precipitation. If this was just a little bit further west, we'd be seeing a very active 10-day period for the East Coast. But it's just offshore. Now, for the temperature pattern, we do see that cooler air placed over the east here, so we can see this. We also see for the west, and then warmth in between. Let's keep going, and really we see this warm up eventually reach the east by the time we're taking a look at early next week. So this is Monday the 2nd, and what we see is a very strong negative PNA placed over the west. Here we see surging warmth through the central and eastern states. So we see a lot of this activity taking place here. This is overall the pattern we're going to see, and I mean, as I just keep going with this, we don't really see much changing. I mean, we keep that negative PNA, and we really keep this warmth in the east all the way through the 12th here on this particular model. But we're going to take a look at another in a minute that disagrees, so I want to show you that in just a second. But we could still see the remnants of that negative PNA bringing lasting impacts here throughout the United States. As we take a look at this model, this one's taking a look at weekly increments. So I want to take a look. This is the 28th through the 5th. Let's just move it to the 5th through the 12th. And we still see that warmth over the east, cold over the west. It's really as we take a look at the 12th through the 19th that we see a big flip. We see more warmth in the west than we saw before, possibly a neutral or positive PNA. And then we see this cold able to make its way into the east. So perhaps around the midpoint of October, seeing some colder air moving in. Take a look at the 19th through the 26th. And again, out west, the theme here, although this bubble's a lot bigger, we see positive temperatures should act like a positive PNA. Cooler air surging down the eastern United States, and that's actually some pretty intense colder air. 26th through the 2nd of November, we still see this cold hanging on, but I think the important thing to note here is that we perhaps are seeing the beginning of another negative PNA pattern taking place here. So we could see this warmth stretch eastward. Let's see what happens, and sure enough, here for the 2nd through the 9th, what we see is this expanding cold along the west. That's a little thin, but you get the point. So these areas are cooler, negative PNA, and we see this warmth begin to really resurface for the east for the most part. There's some colder areas, but overall this is a warmer pattern in the east if that does take place like that. So certainly, as we're taking a look at multiple weeks like we just did, you're going to see warmer and colder times as we saw. But I think the important thing is the mid to late point of October look really cold according to this model. And that's something we're going to have to pay close attention to. This is a long-range model, so we want to take it with a grain of salt. But certainly something to pay attention to, something to consider, and something that may end up being the case. So we're going to watch it closely. We do upload every single day, so we will update you guys on this. Be sure to subscribe for daily weather uploads just like this one. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.